Even if you personally hate the Nintendo Switch, the fact of the matter is that the thing just sold a kajillion units, and Nintendo's kinda tearing ass around the backyard right now. You know, as much as I personally like the Switch, that actually has me worried as hell, and if you give me like 1 minute, I'll probably need a little overtime to tell you why. Okay, so anytime a video game console's on top of the world, the company behind it almost always seems to get a big head about it. I already made an entire video going into details about every time this ever happened, but I didn't talk about the Switch's successor because it wasn't really a thing yet, so I'm gonna talk about it now. But to make a short story even shorter, I'm not necessarily convinced that Nintendo's follow-up's gonna be a home run. I mean, you'd think that with about 40 years of experience in the gaming industry and over a century of existing in general, that Nintendo would kinda know better than to get cocky after a little bit of success, but despite repeating this mistake more than literally any other video game company in history, the below oversized end never seems to learn. Hopefully I'm wrong and N-Dog's next console rips ass all over the living room carpet, but if you take a look at history, I don't see how you wouldn't at least be concerned. I mean, sure, the Super Nintendo didn't get too cocky outside of not allowing blood in Mortal Kombat and things of that nature, but Nintendo did embarrass Sony on purpose during this time period when they let them announce a partnership over a CD add-on before telling the world that Sony were dinguses and that they were actually going to make one with Philips. As we all know, this led to the greatest line of spike consoles ever made in the PlayStation brand, and then we saw the Virtual Boy try to follow up the popularity of the Game Boy, the 64 insisting on cartridges despite developers' wishes, and instead of actually learning from their mistakes, they decided to chalk the 64's shortcomings up to bad luck, and then they'd go on to literally insult third parties and charge them more money to develop games for the GameCube. And yeah, they also let Rare slip away to Microsoft during this time period because they thought that third parties would just be begging to make games for their purple lunchbox. I love the GameCube, but Nintendo was cocky as hell during this time period if you've seen some of the things they said in interviews back then. But then just when it seemed like they learned their lesson on the Wii, they went right back to their dirty old habits and just expected everybody to buy a Wii U despite a laundry list of problems like naming it poorly, horrible marketing, lackluster launch lineup, a slow flow of games, and the fact that the 3DS was cheaper, portable, and something only I ever seem to talk about, the quality of the games were only like 5% worse. Not graphics-wise, but quality. I go on and on for hours about why the Wii U failed, and Lord knows that I have, but it ultimately boiled down to Nintendo being cocky over the success with the Wii. Hell, even the 3DS itself was cocky as frig right out of the gate with its price and lack of games before being humbled, even worse than the time Hulk Hogan got humbled by the Iron Sheik. So yeah, I suppose it's possible that Nintendo may have finally learned their lesson. In fact, I don't even think the chances are that low, but I do still think it's more likely that Nintendo's gonna pull a Nintendo with the Switch's successor. What do I mean by pulling a Nintendo, you ask? Well, if I were to ask 1,000 Switch owners what they'd like to see out of the successor, the main thing you'd probably hear is better graphics, good games, and in a perfect world, a competent online service. Aside from being underpowered, the Switch kinda has a great thing going with the whole hybrid concept, so I don't think anybody really wants anything too crazy, but this is Nintendo we're talking about here, so everything they do's gotta be crazy. To be fair though, the Switch itself was kind of a crazy concept at first, so sometimes pulling a Nintendo does work out, but like sometimes it's just not necessary. I mean, I actually did kind of like the Wii U gamepad when it was actually appropriate for a game, but like 4 or 5 games wasn't enough to justify forcing it an entire console generation, and the same could be said for the 3D and the 3DS, although at least in that case, you could just kind of keep it turned off all the time, which most of us did. For better or worse, Nintendo doesn't really believe in the sometimes less is more philosophy, but I just hope that if the Switch tries some kind of a wacky new concept, that it's not something that everyone's forced to deal with for every game. I think the Joy-Cons are a pretty good example of bringing something new to the table without getting in the way of people who just want to sit back and play a traditional AAA game like Popeye. They're really just Wii remotes that go the extra mile, so yeah, it'd be cool if Nintendo added a little more for the next console, but I'm just worried that the new controllers are gonna be like gloves or a tablet or something like that, with the attitude being, we're Nintendo, trust us, you're gonna love it. Hell, I don't even have faith that they're gonna give the damn thing a proper name. Like, assuming it's just gonna be a more powerful hybrid, something like the Super Switch works fine by me, and honestly, it'd be fine with them just choosing a random word out of the dictionary, even. I don't know, I just have this uneasy feeling that it's gonna be called something like the New Switch U, although, to be fair, they haven't given something a bad name in a good while, so I feel like they probably fired the head of the naming department, Carl, by now. At least I hope that butthole's gone. Even though I am worried about the successor though, I'd be absolutely stunned if they ditch the whole hybrid concept since it's a market that they pretty much own all to themselves. And I know that some people wish Nintendo would just go all out on a non-portable console that focuses on graphics and all that, but they've never exactly had a problem with selling assloads of games without the most up-to-date hardware in the past, so I don't think their game plan going forward is to release a ridiculously powerful console that the average person couldn't even afford. Honestly, I won't have a problem with the Switch 2 not being on par with the PS5 or Series X, just as long as it's considerably stronger than what we've got now. Granted, at this point, that's a low bar, but still. But on a bit of a side note though, the longer we wait for the Switch's successor, the closer the gap it'll have between the other consoles, so even though it's really frustrating that some games can't even play a preloaded video without skipping every single time without fail, I still don't really see what the rush is to get a successor out as soon as possible. I mean, yeah, the Switch is weak as frig, but the longer we can hold out now, then the longer it'll be before we're in the exact same boat with the successor. Graphics are a given, though. How much extra juice will Nintendo give it? Terry only knows, but seeing as how Sony's getting away with selling games at $70 with Microsoft likely about to be doing the exact same thing, you can bet your dad's ass that Nintendo's gonna try to pull this stunt too. I mean, come on, they charged $60 for the Link's Awakening remake that probably could have ran on the 3DS for $40, and they even charged 10 extra bones for the port of Tropical Freeze than they did on the Wii U, so do you really not think they'll pull the $70 stunt when everyone else is getting away with it scot-free? Frig, it wouldn't even surprise me if they tried pulling that before the Switch's life is even over, since I'm sure Nintendo's head's bigger than that lump in my brain that my doctor keeps telling me I need to wait out. If Nintendo does jack the price of their Switch games up before its successor's even out, though, then I'm 100% convinced that the new hardware is gonna botch something pretty big. We all know that hoping for anything online related to be anything above competence is just plain delusional at this point, but I don't think that has anything to do with arrogance as much as it is Nintendo's ignorance to the internet even in the 20s. Just in case you had any hope that Nintendo's just gonna suddenly understand the internet out of nowhere when the Switch's successor comes out, then just take a look at the Switch's current online service right now. They're holding online play hostage with a ransom that we rent 20 to 30-year-old games from them. I'm telling you, they just don't get it. Again, I really don't mean to sound negative, and I hope I'm wronger than wrong can be, but I'm not gonna lie just so we can hang out, so I've gotta be honest about this feeling I have trouble shaking off. But you know what? Even if the Switch's successor botches it to the high heavens, though, I have no doubts that it's still gonna be a big success, since it'll be the only platform in the world where you get a brand new Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, yada yada, you get the point. Well, you know, aside from hacking anyway, which most people really don't do, so I'm sure Nintendo will be safe no matter what. I just hope they don't become dicks is all. Well, you know, bigger dicks than normal anyway. Anyway, that's all for today, but if you got a kick on my incoherent rambling and disturbing imagery, though, then you should check out that video I mentioned earlier where I talk about the history of cocky video game consoles, but if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go watch some PG-13 movies. Later!